Hey there guys, welcome back to another video. There are some things I was thinking about and I kind of wanted to share, and I'm on the road right now to Mountain View. Yeah, I've never been here before. I had a lot of friends from this area, but I've just never been here. And yeah, I'm really hoping I don't run out of gas because I only have like $30 left and I still have to drive back to school. So we'll just have to see how this goes. Anyway, I was wanting to talk about drugs. In my opinion, or my opinion, I can't even think right anymore. I would like to suggest the fact that we are all drug addicts. Not all of us, but the majority of us are. And I would like to suggest, and I'm getting this from the scripture, Galatians chapter 5, verse 17. I think it's 17. I better turn over here because this guy's going to get mad at me because I'm not going as fast as he wants me to. Galatians chapter 5, verse 17. I really think it's verse 17, but anyway, it basically says, the Spirit is contrary to the flesh. Okay? Now, I think, before I start talking about drugs, let me explain that I think a lot of times in our Christian lifestyles, I think we live a lot of the time to please ourselves. And we don't even realize it. And this is something I've talked about a lot, but I'm kind of trying to merge in the idea that we're using a lot of things as drugs. You have the spirit and you have the flesh. Okay, what is the spirit? Well, the spirit is what we're supposed to be living by, right? That's what we're supposed to be living in. We're supposed to have the spirit within us. That's what we're supposed to be living by, not the flesh. As Paul is saying, dude, the spirit is contrary to the flesh. So the flesh will not do what it wants to do, but it will live by the Spirit instead. And I think what Paul is trying to say is he's like, you know what? Your flesh isn't always going to be comfortable. And we got to live by the Spirit even through trials and tribulations. I mean, you hear about that like in 1 Peter. Read 1 Peter, he talks about, it's good that you're standing strong in your trials and tribulations. So it's okay to have trials and tribulations. However, I think a lot of the times, especially in America, us Christians use things, even in religious settings, to fulfill the flesh, using God's name up there. Let's look at, I like to use the church as an example because a lot of people get on to me and they're like, you really need to go to church, I've kind of shared my opinion on that. I believe the church is a fellowship of believers who actually communicate with one another. It's not just a building where everybody dresses up nice and just sits in a room and listens to a guy talk for 45 minutes. I don't think that's the church. I think that's a sermon. And I think there's a difference between the sermon and a church. A sermon is just an idea. But if there's only one guy talking, there's no fellowship. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. I think a lot of times there are a lot of drug usages in the church, and let me explain. Before you go to church, what do? We dress up nice. Okay, stop there. Why? Why do we dress up nice? And I think a lot of people say, well, it's to look good for God. It's good to dress up nice for this very moral and spiritual occasion. Okay, I can buy that. But I think the majority of the time, at least when I go, I'm worried about what other people are going to be thinking if I don't dress nice like they do. So it's kind of an ego thing. It's kind of a self-conscious thing. Well, what are they going to think if I don't dress up nice? So that's kind of thinking about myself. It's a selfish thing. It's not thinking about God. It's a selfish thing, okay? So there's one drug usage right there, thinking of myself. What's another drug? Well, when you get into the church, what do? You kind of hide away and cringe. You shake people's hand and then you leave, and that's about it. Because you're so, it's kind of stressful, seeing people you don't know, because you don't really get to know people in the church unless it's a small churches. I like small churches because I think it's more of a community and fellowship. However, I think bigger churches, you just don't know anybody. You just shake everybody's hand, and so you get nervous. What do you do then? Well, you go to the coffee shop in the church and you drink coffee, and caffeine relaxes you. It's a drug. So I think that's a very straightforward drug right there. So there's some more drug usage right there. You're chilling yourself out. And then when the service starts, what do? First? Well, they normally have a praise and worship service. And depending on how big of a church or how nice of a church you go to, they're going to have some really good sounds. It's going to sound good. going to have some good players. It's going to be emotionally enticing. It's just going to be drawing you in, and it might even make you cry. And I believe music is also a form of drug because it is a mind-altering thing in the world. It's a sound. It's a sense. In the same way that a massage feels good to your flesh because it's a sense. It's a sense of touch and feel, and it's just it just feels. I love back massages, and I think music is a sense of hearing, and it can be emotionally enticing. So I'd like to ask: is this sound bringing you closer to God, or is it just putting you on a spiritual high? And I think there's more drug usages there. And I've seen worship take place with an acoustic guitar on the porch with 3 people. It wasn't like totally wasn't perfect bass, wasn't perfect treble, wasn't, they didn't have big subwoofers and tweeter speakers. It was just an acoustic guitar. However, I believe there can be true worship there in the spirit. And it wasn't putting you on a spiritual high. And then, what's another drug that we use in the church? I think they are sermons. Sermons, especially if we agree with what the pastor is saying, it just makes us feel good about ourselves. It's like, oh man, I know I'm doing the right thing. It's so great. And that's another drug, feeling good about yourself. In the same way that any drug can make you feel good about yourself. So smoke some weed. You'll feel good about everything. I've never smoked weed. I don't plan to either. But that's just what I hear. So there's another drug. And what's the last drug I want to talk about is what do you do after the service? A lot of times, we'll go out and get some ice cream or go out to Pizza Hut. And there's a cop car up here, so I'm going the speed limit, so I don't know. Like, what do we do after church? Well, we go out for ice cream or go to Pizza Hut, get some pizza. That's fun. It's appetizing to the flesh. Now, I don't think that any of these things are wrong. I'm going to move over because there's a cop guy in the road. I don't want to hit him. Then I get a really bad ticket. Sorry for the cop, too. I mean, that would suck if I killed him, but really bad if I got a ticket. Anyways, there's another truck up here. So I think a lot of the things we do are only to please the flesh, and we completely forget about God, even in our religious settings. But this doesn't have to do just with the church. I think it has to do with anything that we do. What was that noise? That looks like a cop back there. Anyways, so that was, I think we get on a really judgmental hurl when we see people with a Mountain Dew or a cigarette or they're smoking pot. And they're just trying to feel good. Is it right? No, that doesn't make it right. I don't think caffeine's wrong, but honestly, I love it. But I think that we do the same thing with other things, like going out to eat after church, or feeling good about ourselves, or dressing up nice, or getting high on the Spirit during worship service instead of praising God. We use drugs all the time, and I think in order to understand whether we truly are being sincere and whether we're truly worshiping God is to determine, are we doing this to please our flesh, or are we doing this to worship God? Because in Galatians chapter 5:17, Paul says, the Spirit is contrary to the flesh, meaning they're not supposed to go together. They're contrary. They're like opposites. But it seems like we mix everything spiritual, especially in America and the churches, to feel good. And I think I'd like to see some selfless service, and I think that's why missions groups and Christian camps and stuff, people that are truly giving themselves to God, that's where the true sincerity lies, because there's selflessness involved. It's not of the flesh. It's not because it feels good. It's because we're truly wanting to please God. And I think that is where the church is, and I think that's where the Spirit is. It's not in getting high on worship. It's something completely selfless and surrendering to God. So I'd like to ask you to think about, because I know I've been thinking about it, because I've been a drug addict all my life in the church, and I think a lot of us are drug addicts, and just ask yourself, if you think you could worship God and serve God without getting high, and without feeling good about ourselves, without the flesh just being groomed, ask yourself that, because I think if we can't do that, then there's selfishness involved, and it's drug use. So anyway, that's all I really wanted to talk about. I'm running out of time on my video. And I guess I'll talk to you guys later.